The sandwich, the scream, and the silence it was supposed to be a quiet morning. The kind Sundar Pichai used to treasure when he had a rare day off from the weight of leading one of the world's biggest tech companies. The city was unusually calm. For a Saturday, the sun stretched softly over the glass windows of downtown San Francisco, washing the streets in a golden hue. Traffic hummed in the distance like a lullaby, and the breeze carried the comforting scent of warm bread from a nearby bakery. Sundar had slipped on a simple hoodie and jeans to blend in. He wasn't looking for attention. He just wanted a moment to breathe, to reconnect with the parts of life that didn't involve boardrooms, metrics, or innovation deadlines. He wandered, without a destination, letting his feet guide him until he found himself in front of a small, locally owned deli. It looked modest and charming, the kind of place that had history written in the cracks of its bricks. Inside, the owner greeted him with a smile, unaware of the man's identity, just happy to have a customer. Sundar liked that. Anonymity, sincerity. He ordered a sandwich roasted turkey on sourdough with lettuce, tomato, and avocado, and a bottle of sparkling water. Nothing extravagant, just comfort. He stepped outside and crossed the narrow alley to a wooden bench shaded by an old oak tree. Pigeons fluttered nearby, and a distant saxophone played a slow jazz tune from a street performer across the square. Sundar unwrapped the sandwich slowly, feeling oddly at peace. But just as he raised the first bite to his mouth, he heard it. A voice, high-pitched, urgent. Don't eat that. His hand froze midair. The sandwich hovered just inches from his lips. His brows furrowed as he looked up, startled. The voice had come from a boy. Young, scruffy, with tangled hair and a tattered hoodie that looked several sizes too big. His jeans were ripped at the knees, not in a fashionable way, but worn down from sleeping on sidewalks and climbing through dumpsters. His face was thin, skin pale, eyes wide and wild, not with madness but desperation. Sundar blinked, confused. The boy stood about 20 feet away, across the sidewalk, breathing heavily like he'd been running. People around glanced for a second, then went back to their routines. Nobody paid much attention. Just another kid, maybe unstable, maybe high, maybe hungry, but there was something in the boy's eyes that made Sundar pause. Please, the boy said again, louder now, walking toward him. Don't eat that. Sundar slowly lowered the sandwich, still unsure what was happening. Why? He asked gently, not in fear, but concern. The boy looked around, eyes darting toward the deli across the street, then back at Sundar. Just trust me. Throw it away now. His tone wasn't threatening. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't even a request. It was a plea. Pure and raw. Was there something wrong with it? Sundar asked, glancing down at the sandwich, which looked perfectly fine. You don't understand, the boy whispered, almost trembling now. I saw them. In the back. In the kitchen. They dropped a bag of powder into the sauce. I think it's rat poison. Sundar's heart skipped. The boy's voice was breaking, his chest rising and falling with panic. They didn't see me, the boy continued, almost in a rush now. I was looking through the trash. Behind the deli, I saw them arguing. Two of the workers. One said something about teaching the owner a lesson. Then they poured something into the bin where they keep the sauces. Sundar's instincts kicked in. He didn't know whether to believe the boy or not, but there was too much urgency in his voice to dismiss. Slowly, he stood up and walked over to a trash can. He tossed the sandwich in without hesitation. Thank you, the boy muttered, visibly. Relieved, Sundar studied him now. The boy looked no older than 12, maybe 13. His shoes had holes. His hands were bruised. But his eyes, they held a kind of haunted intelligence, as if he had seen far more than any child. What's your name? Sundar asked. Milo, the boy said. Milo Parker. You live around here? Milo hesitated. I don't really live anywhere. Sundar nodded slowly, connecting the dots. You're homeless. Milo glanced away, ashamed. How long? Milo's voice dropped to a whisper. Since my mom died. There it was. The weight behind the eyes. The pain. buried beneath the urgency. Sundar felt a heaviness in his chest. How long ago was that? 8 months, Milo replied. I've been moving around. Shelters, parks, rooftops, sometimes churches when they let me. Sundar crouched to Milo's level. And you? Saw someone putting poison in the sauce. Milo nodded. I swear, I'm not lying. I wouldn't lie about something like that. Sundar believed him. Okay, he said softly. Let's go inside. We'll talk to the owner. Milo's eyes widened in fear. No, we can't. They'll know I saw. They might hurt me. You won't be alone, Sundar reassured him. Trust me. But even as he said it, Sundar wasn't sure what they were walking into. He took Milo by the hand, not caring what anyone thought. Together, they crossed the street and stepped back into the deli. The man behind the counter greeted Sundar again with a smile, but his smile faltered when he saw Milo. You, the man said coldly. I told you never to come back here. Milo flinched. He's with me, Sundar said calmly. Do you know? This kid? The man asked, skeptical. I do now, Sundar replied. He said he saw something in your kitchen. The man's face turned hard. He's lying. He's a thief. Always digging through our trash. Don't believe a word he says. So you're denying anything happened? Sundar asked. Of course I am, the man snapped. I run a clean place. Sundar stared at him quietly, then asked, Do you have cameras in the kitchen? The man hesitated. No. So you can't prove nothing happened. And he can't prove it did. The man didn't answer. Sundar turned to leave, but stopped at the door. I hope you're telling the truth. Because if something happens to your customers today, and it's traced back to your kitchen, you'll be shut down, and more. The deli owner didn't respond. Outside, Sundar led Milo back to the bench. You were brave, Sundar said. Most kids would have just kept walking. Milo shrugged. I couldn't let someone die. Not again. Those last 2 words hit like thunder. What do you mean? Sundar asked. Gently. Milo looked away. My mom, it wasn't just that she got sick. She ate something. From a food bank. Expired. Contaminated. Nobody cared. They just said it was bad luck. But I knew. Someone was lazy. Someone didn't check. And she paid the price? Sundar sat in stunned silence. Milo continued. Since then, I can't ignore stuff like that. If I see something wrong, I have to speak, even if no one listens. Sundar took a breath. You did more than speak. You saved someone, maybe more. Milo looked at him. Why are you being nice to me? Sundar smiled faintly. Because someone once gave me a chance when I had nothing. Milo looked confused. I grew up poor, Sundar explained. In India. 1 room. No hot water. I walked miles just to make a phone call. I know what it feels like to be invisible. Milo studied him. You don't look poor now. No. Sundar chuckled. Not anymore. So, who are you? Sundar hesitated, then said simply, Someone who believes in second chances. Milo seemed to observe that for a moment. His shoulders loosened slightly. Just then, Sundar's phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. Urgent. They needed him back at the office. Something about a board emergency. He looked at Milo. He couldn't just leave him here. Listen, Sundar said. I have to go. But I want you to wait for me. Right here. I'll be back in 2 hours. And then we'll talk about what comes. Next. A place to stay. Food, maybe school. Milo's eyes widened. You'd do that for me? You saved my life, remember? Sundar smiled. Milo nodded slowly. Okay, I'll wait. Sundar stood and walked away, glancing back twice. Milo sat on the bench, still and hopeful. But as Sundar disappeared into the crowd, someone else was watching. A tall man. Lurking in the alley. He had seen the entire exchange, and he was not happy. Asterisk. The man in the alley at the moment Sundar disappeared. Into the crowd, a chill seemed to settle over the alley. Milo sat on the wooden bench, his fingers nervously fidgeting with the frayed ends of his sleeves. The late morning light cast long shadows through the oak tree, but it wasn't the shade that made him uneasy. He could feel its eyes on him, not the passing glances from strangers. Not the looks of pity he was used to receiving. No, this was different. Cold. Deliberate. Sharp like a knife pressed lightly against the back of his neck. He turned his head slightly, trying not to be obvious, but his heart skipped when he saw the figure. A tall man in a dark hoodie leaned against the brick wall of the alley across the street. He wasn't just standing there, he was staring right at him. His face was shadowed, but Milo could make out the angle of his jaw, clenched tightly. The man didn't move, didn't blink. Just watched. Milo swallowed hard. He knew better then. To run immediately. People like that. If you showed fear, they followed. Instead, he looked down at the sidewalk and tried to act like he hadn't seen anything. He needed to think. Fast. He stood up slowly and stretched, pretending to yawn. He picked up the plastic water bottle Sundar had left behind and walked away from the bench, turning casually into the small pedestrian walkway next to the bookstore. It was narrow, lined with potted plants and old posters advertising poetry. Readings and jazz nights. He'd been down here before. It had a back exit that opened near the bus stop. His footsteps echoed off the walls. And behind him, he heard it dot another pair of feet. Slow, measured, following. He quickened his pace. His mind raced. Was this because of the deli? Did someone see him snooping? Or was this just another bad coincidence in a string of too many? He wished Sundar was still here. For the first time in months, he'd felt safe. But that safety had vanished the moment Sundar turned the corner dot at the end of the walkway. He pushed through the old iron gate and broke into a run. He darted across the street, weaving between cars, ignoring the angry honks. He knew these streets better than anyone. He'd slept on most of them. He bolted into a parking garage, climbed 3 levels without stopping, and hid behind a parked van. Chest heaving, heart pounding dot for several long minutes, nothing. Then, footsteps again. Slow, echoing in the stairwell. The man was still coming. Milo scanned his surroundings. He spotted an old maintenance door. He pushed it open. It led into a narrow hallway that smelled of bleach and oil. He ran until he reached the freight elevator and pressed the call button repeatedly, fingers shaking as the door creaked open. He slipped inside and punched the button for the rooftop dot. When he reached the top, the wind greeted him with a hard gust. He stepped out and crouched behind a vent, trying to collect himself. Why was this happening? And who was that man? Meanwhile, across the city, Sundar sat in the corner of a sleek, glass-walled conference room at his headquarters. The emergency board meeting had taken an unexpected turn. What was supposed to be a simple conversation about shifting product. Timelines had unraveled into a heated debate about data ethics and consumer privacy. Voices clashed. Egos flared. But Sundar's mind wasn't in the room. His thoughts kept drifting back to the boy. To Milo to that scream, "Don't eat that," and the look in his eyes. He had met thousands of people throughout his life. Tech, prodigies, politicians, professors, CEOs. But Milo had something different, something fierce, something fragile, a kind of survival wisdom forged in suffering. And Sundar couldn't shake the feeling that the boy had been telling the truth. So, as the debate raged on, Sundar quietly opened his laptop and began typing within moments. He pulled up the internal contact sheet for local law enforcement partnerships. Over the years, Google had worked with authorities on several tech safety initiatives. Now, Sundar planned to use one of those contacts. He sent a discreet message to a detective he trusted, Jonah Thorne. The message was brief. Possible tampering at neighborhood deli. Credible source. May involve retaliation against owner. Can you send someone to investigate quietly? Then he scheduled a ride back downtown. He had told Milo 2 hours. He'd be back in 1 meanwhile, back on the rooftop. Milo sat with his back pressed to the metal wall, knees pulled up to his chest. He tried to think back. Who could that man be? Was he one of the workers in the deli's kitchen? Someone who had seen him peeking around the back that morning? And then, like a puzzle snapping into place, he remembered 3 nights ago, While rummaging behind the same gully's dumpster, he had seen two men arguing. He hadn't paid much attention, then too busy trying to find something edible. But one of them had dropped a box, and the lid had popped open. Inside were small, clear bags filled with powder. He thought it was sugar at first, but the way the man had snapped and shoved the box into a black bag told him it wasn't something legal. What if it was the same man? Milo felt a sickening twist in his stomach. He wasn't just running from a deli worker. He might have stumbled onto something bigger: drug operations, revenge, or worse. And now they knew he had seen his phone buzz waiter's phone. But he didn't have a phone. He looked down. A small note had been slipped under the elevator door. He crawled to it and picked it up. Heart thumping. The note said, "You should have kept your mouth shut." He stared at the words, cold sweat dripping down his back. How had they followed him? How did they know where he went? Was someone tracking him? His mind flashed to the plastic water bottle Sundar had left. Was it possible someone had tagged it? But no, it wasn't Sundar. Sundar had helped him. Whoever was doing this, they were watching closely. Milo realized he couldn't wait for Sundar to come back. He had to move again. He crept down the stairwell, checking each level carefully. When he reached the bottom, he snuck out the service entrance and blended with a crowd of shoppers near a street market. He kept his hoodie up, eyes scanning every corner. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten all day. But food would have to. Wait, he needs somewhere safe, somewhere quiet. He thought of an old parking lot under the bridge by 7th Street. There was an abandoned van there. He'd slept in it before. He headed that way. 45 minutes later, Sundar returned to the wooden bench beneath the oak tree. Milo was gone. Sundar looked around, confused. Maybe the boy had gotten nervous. Maybe he hadn't believed Sundar would really come back. But then he saw something odd. The empty water bottle was still on the bench. Next to it, a torn piece of paper, folded in half. He picked it up. It was part of a flyer for a missing child. Scribbled on the back in pencil were the words, "Someone's after me. Sorry, I had to run." Sundar's face went pale. He pulled out his phone and called Detective Jonah Thorne directly. "Jonah," he said. "Voice urgent. We have a problem. That boy I told you about, he's in danger." "What boy?" "A kid named Milo. He saw something behind that deli. He stopped me from eating there. Now he's gone." There was a pause. "I'll find him," Jonah said. Sundar stared down the street, heart heavy. He had promised the boy he'd come back. He had promised safety. But now Milo was on the run again. And worse, he wasn't just running from hunger or loneliness. He was running from someone who wanted him silent. Someone who might already be closer than anyone realized. And as the city moved on, people laughing in coffee shops, cars rushing past traffic lights, music playing in the air. None of them knew that a 12-year-old boy with a secret was hiding somewhere in their midst. Alone. Scared. And watched. Asterisk the van under 7th Street beneath the rusted arches of the old overpass on 7th Street. The city's pulse quieted into a soft, rhythmic thrum. The noises from traffic above blended with the occasional screech of brakes. But down here, in the shadows, life moved slower, darker. This was a place forgotten by time, tucked between chain-link fences, abandoned construction zones, and the distant hum of a world that didn't stop to notice what was beneath its feet. Milo knew this part of the city. Well, he had hidden here before. The van, an old Chevy with peeling paint and shattered windows, had become a makeshift shelter for those with nowhere else to go. Over the past few months, he'd come here when he needed to disappear. There was no light, no warmth, and no comfort, but there was silence. And sometimes silence was enough to survive. He crawled through the broken side door of the van and shut it gently behind him. The interior smelled of rust, mildew, and old gasoline. The torn cushions had long been stripped, and a collection of damp blankets lay folded in the corner, left by someone who had passed through before him. Milo curled into the darkest corner and pulled one of the blankets around him. His heart was still racing. The memory of that note, "You should have kept your mouth shut," was etched into his mind. Whoever that man was, he wasn't bluffing. Milo had grown up reading people quickly. Survival had taught him that. And the way that man moved, the way he stared, the way he followed, it wasn't random. It was personal. He took slow breaths, trying to calm himself. His fingers traced the edge of his jeans, worn so thin they were nearly threadbare. He had to think clearly. Panic would get him caught. But part of him was starting to wonder if he had already made the worst mistake of his life by telling Sundar. Anything, but then again, if he hadn't spoken up, Sundar could have died. And even now, even in hiding, a part of Milo felt proud, because for once, he hadn't run. For once, he had tried to protect someone. The thought gave him a sliver of courage. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Detective Jonah Thorne leaned over his cluttered desk in a small precinct office. The hum of overhead fluorescent lights buzzed quietly as he stared at the daily security files. Sundar's call had lit a fire under him. He had known Sundar for years, known him to be calm, measured, never prone to overreaction. If Sundar said a boy had risked his life to prevent a poisoning, Jonah took that seriously, but something wasn't right. The deli in question had no record of prior violations. Yet 3 employees had quit in the last month. No explanation. No paper trail. He had called the owner, who swore everything was fine and denied knowing anyone named Milo. Still, Jonah had sent a uniformed officer to investigate quietly. What the officer found disturbed him. "We checked the back alley," the officer had reported. "Found traces of white powder around the trash bins. Not a lot, but enough to raise suspicion." Jonah had the powder sent to the lab. And then the call came in. The preliminary report confirmed what Milo had feared. The substance matched common compounds found in commercial-grade rodenticides. Rat poison. Jonah sat back. Breath-catching. It was real. The boy wasn't just a scared kid with an overactive imagination. He had witnessed something dangerous, something potentially deadly. And now he had vanished. Jonah picked up his phone and called Sundar again. The call was brief but urgent. He was right, Jonah said. The powder was poison. Someone tried to contaminate that kitchen. Sundar felt a chill run down his spine. And Milo? Still no sign. Sundar rubbed his temples, mind racing. "We need to find him." "I've already sent out an alert," Jonah replied. "But if he's trying to hide, he may not trust anyone." Sundar stood at his office window, overlooking the city. His thoughts weren't on the skyline. They were on a scared, hungry boy somewhere in the shadows running from a threat he never should have been forced to face. "What kind of city are we?" Sundar said quietly. "If a child who does the right thing has to go into hiding to stay alive?" Jonah didn't respond, because deep down, they both knew the answer. Back under the overpass, Milo stirred at the sound of voices outside the van. His body went stiff. He pressed his ear to the side of the vehicle. Heart TGEDDING. 2 men, speaking in hushed tones. "You sure he came this way?" "Yeah, a kid in a hoodie. Ran across 7th Street about an hour ago. Looked like him. Checked the van." Milo didn't have time to think. He crawled to the back of the van, opened the rusted rear hatch just enough to slip out, and dropped silently to the ground. He rolled under a nearby dumpster and held his breath. The van door creaked open. Heavy footsteps climbed inside. Someone shifted the blankets. Then, nothing here. But it smells like someone was. Milo didn't wait. As the footsteps moved to the other side, he darted from beneath the dumpster and ran, keeping low to the ground. He slipped through a gap in the fence and found himself on a service road behind an old warehouse. He kept running. No destination, no plan, just movement. As he ran, tears blurred his vision. Not from fear, but exhaustion. He hadn't slept in over a day, hadn't eaten anything but half a granola bar. His legs ached, his lungs burned, but he kept going. He had to survive. He had to find Sundar again, because Sundar had believed him. And right now, that belief was the only thing Milo and finally. After what felt like hours, he collapsed behind a row of dumpsters near a closed laundromat. He curled up beneath a cardboard sheet and tried to make himself invisible. His body trembled, but not just from the cold. He was tired of running, tired of being scared. And as he lay there, he whispered something to himself, a whisper so soft only the night could hear it. I won't let them win. Across the city, Sundar sat alone in his car, unable to sleep. He stared at the city map on his phone, marking off places Milo had mentioned, parks, churches, rooftops. Anywhere he might go. Then his eyes landed on 7th Street. He remembered Milo mentioning it in passing. Something about an old van. Sundar didn't hesitate. He grabbed his coat and told his driver to head there. Immediately, he had made a promise, and he wasn't about to break it, especially not to the one person who had saved his life with nothing more than his voice. Asterisk the boy. The bridge and the broken promises. City had gone quiet under the blanket of midnight. But for Sundar Pichai, sleep was not an option. His car rolled slowly along 7th Street, its headlights cutting through the low fog hanging over the pavement. Puddles shimmered like ghosts on the asphalt, and the streetlights flickered now and then, casting long shadows that moved like whispers. This part of town was older, less polished. Graffiti clung to crumbling walls like scars, and broken windows reflected memories of lives that had passed through but never stayed. Sundar's thoughts were, Harry. Milo had vanished. Again. And this time, there had been signs of real danger, men searching, poison confirmed. A cryptic note slipped under a door. It was no longer a question of whether the boy had been right. It was a question of whether Sundar would find him before someone else did. His driver, a kind older man named Marcus, slowed the car near the overpass. This is it, sir, Marcus said quietly. Sundar stepped out. The cold hit him instantly, wrapping around his ribs and sinking into his bones. He pulled his coat tighter and walked toward the edge of the alley near the broken down van. He stopped. The door was ajar. Inside, blankets had been scattered. A sign someone had left in a hurry. Sundar crouched, reaching for something shiny near. The van's wheel, a small keychain, shaped like a spaceship. He remembered Milo fiddling with it earlier, spinning it nervously in his fingers. He was here. But he wasn't anymore. Sundar stood and looked around. The ground was wet, smeared with shoe prints too small to belong to an adult. He followed them, around the van, down the alley, and toward the old fence with the broken panel. A trail. He moved carefully, methodically, deeper into the quiet, empty blocks behind the warehouse district. There were no cameras here, no bystanders, only shadows. Milo, he called out softly, hoping the wind would carry his voice where GPS and maps could not. Milo, it's me, Sundar. I came back. No response. Just silence and the soft ticking of the cooling engine behind him. But then a sound, not words. Not footsteps. Sniffling. Barely audible. He followed it, heart pounding, and there he saw him curled up behind a rusted vending machine outside a shuttered laundromat, knees drawn to his chest, eyes half closed in exhaustion. Milo. Sundar approached. Slowly. Milo, he whispered. The boy flinched, startled. His eyes darted open, panic filling them, until they locked with Sundar's. He came back, Milo said, his voice cracking. Of course I did, Sundar said softly. I promised you, didn't I? Milo sat up weakly, his breath visible in the cold air. He looked smaller than Sundar remembered. Like the weight of the past 24 hours had shrunk him. They're looking for me, Milo said, voice trembling. They found me at the van. I know, Sundar said. I saw the signs, but you're safe now. I'm here. Milo hesitated. I shouldn't have talked to you. I made things worse. You did the right thing, Sundar said firmly, kneeling beside him. You saved lives, Milo, including mine. A tear slipped down the boy's cheek. Then why does it feel like I'm the one being punished? Sundar looked away for a second. The question hurt more than he expected. He had no perfect answer. Because in this world, a boy who did something brave shouldn't have to run. In a fair world, truth should protect you. But this world, it didn't always work that way. I don't know, Sundar whispered. But what I do know is that you're not alone anymore. Milo stared at him. You really mean that? I do, Sundar helped him to his feet, wrapping his coat around the boy's small shoulders. Come with me. We're going somewhere. Warm. Safe. They got into the car, and Marcus didn't ask any questions. He simply nodded and drove. 20 minutes later, they arrived at a quiet, gated townhouse on the edge of the city. It was one of Sundar's private residences, rarely used, simple but secure. He walked Milo inside, helped him into clean clothes, and brought him a bowl of warm soup. Milo ate slowly, cautiously. As if unsure if it was real, Sundar sat across from him at the table. There's more to this, isn't there? Sundar asked, gently. The man who followed you. The note. Someone's trying to scare you. Milo hesitated, staring into his soup. You can trust me, Sundar said. Milo looked up. I think the men I saw behind the deli weren't just workers. One of them had a gun and a badge. Not police, but like a private guard. Security, maybe, Milo said. But they weren't protecting the place. They were arguing about shipments, money, and something about payback. They said the owner owed someone big, and if he didn't pay, the customers would pay instead. Sundar's face darkened. It wasn't just food tampering. It was extortion. Maybe organized crime. The owner might have been caught in something bigger than he could handle. You saw all that? Sundar asked. I didn't mean to, Milo said quickly. I was just trying to find food. I didn't know it mattered until I saw you almost. Eat that sandwich. Then I knew it wasn't just business. It was people's lives. Sundar leaned back, stunned by the boy's clarity. His courage. Milo, we need to tell someone. Milo froze. I can't. What if they find me again? You won't be alone, Sundar promised. We'll go to Detective Jonah. He's already investigating. We'll make sure you're protected. Milo swallowed hard. Okay. But if I disappear again, you won't, Sundar interrupted. Not this time. But even as he said it, the phone in his pocket buzzed again. He glanced down. A new message from Jonah. We have a bigger problem. Deli owner found unconscious. In back room. Signs of forced entry. Whoever did this, they're moving fast. Sundar's blood ran cold. He looked up at Milo. We have to leave. Now. What happened? They're not just watching. They're acting. Milo stood. The soup forgotten. Where will we go? Somewhere no one can reach you. As they rushed toward the car, Sundar's thoughts were racing. Someone out there had tried to poison him. Someone had threatened Milo. Now the deli owner was attacked. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a chain reaction, and Milo had accidentally pulled the first pin from the grenade. They climbed into the back seat. And Sundar gave Marcus a new address, a private safe house used for corporate emergencies. But just as the car turned onto the main road, Milo looked out the rear window, and his heart dropped. A black SUV was following them. They're behind us. He whispered. Sundar turned. Marcus glanced into the mirror. I see it too. Tinted windows, no plates. Sundar clenched his jaw. Hang on, Marcus said, pressing harder on the gas. The chase had begun. And this time there would be no turning back. Asterisk. The chase, the past, and the plant night air turned electric with tension as Marcus gripped the wheel tighter, his eyes flickering from the road to the mirror and back again. Behind them, the black SUV trailed closely, eerily quiet, like a shadow with wheels. No headlights, no license plate. Its windows dark as obsidian. It didn't swerve or honk or make any move to pass. It just followed, deliberately, confidently, like a predator circling prey it already knew was cornered. In the back seat. Sundar sat beside Milo, one arm gently shielding the boy while his mind calculated possibilities at lightning speed. It wasn't an ordinary tale. This wasn't a random act. Someone had mobilized. Someone wanted Milo silenced. And now, by association, so is Sundar. Marcus, Sundar said calmly but firmly, take the next left and then cut through Mission Street. We need to lose them before we hit the main highway. Marcus nodded, eyes narrowing in focus. Hold on. He jerked a wheel, tires screeching as the car whipped onto a side street. then darted into a narrow alley lit only by a flickering neon sign from a closed bakery. The SUV followed instantly, faster than expected. Milo pressed his face against the window, trying to stay low. They're still there. They're not backing off. Sundar pulled out his phone and called Jonah. Straight to voicemail. He cursed under his breath and turned to Milo. He said one of the men had a badge, right? Milo nodded. It looked fake, like the kind you see in movies. Maybe private security or something else. Were there any names mentioned? Anything you overheard? Milo closed his eyes, thinking. One of them called the other jocks, and the other one said something like, if we don't make the drop by Sunday, Voss will come down here himself. Sundar's heart froze. That name, Voss. He'd heard it once before. Not in boardrooms. Not in any official document, but in a whispered conversation 2 years ago. During a tech summit, when a CEO from a startup that went bankrupt overnight mentioned a man named Voss, someone connected to a series of tech heists, threats, and extortions. No one had proof. No one even had a full name. Just the word Voss, spoken like a ghost story in backrooms and elevators. If that was who was behind this, then Milo wasn't just in danger, he was at the center of something far bigger than. They had imagined. Marcus turned sharply again, this time speeding into a construction zone, hoping the dirt road and loose gravel would slow the SUV down. The car bounced, jolting Milo from side to side. Behind them, the SUV swerved, trying to adjust, but didn't give up. Sundar made a decision. Marcus, he said, head toward Pier 47. There's an underground parking garage there. Low visibility. Once we're inside, kill the lights. I'll take it from there. Yes, sir. As the car tore through the quiet, sleeping city, Sundar turned to Milo again. We're going to make it, he said, but I need you to be brave a little longer. Milo didn't reply. He just nodded. And for the first time, Sundar saw something flicker behind his eyes. Not fear, not panic, but steel. Survival. 10 minutes later, they reached the pier and descended into the empty garage. Marcus cut the lights. The car slid behind a row of concrete pillars. Silence. A few seconds later, the low hum of the Sioux grew louder. It entered. The garage, headlights still off, like a panther prowling in the dark. Sundar quickly pulled Milo behind the nearest pillar and motioned for silence. They crouched there in the shadows as the SUV crept forward. Its engine purred low, its tires crunching softly on the gravel and dust. One of the doors opened. Footsteps echoed. Heavy boots, methodical, deliberate. Milo held. The man walked past the row of pillars slowly, sweeping a flashlight over the ground. Then he stopped. A soft beep echoed from his phone. They're not in the car, the man muttered into. A small radio. Must have slipped out. Sweep the perimeter. As soon as he turned, Sundar whispered, this way. He took Milo's hand, and they slipped through the emergency exit door into a stairwell. They climbed in silence until they reached the rooftop of the adjacent building. From there, they could see the ocean in the distance and the sleeping city, glowing beneath a cloudy sky. They sat for a moment behind an industrial vent. Catching their breath, Milo leaned against Sundar, his tiny body still trembling. How do they keep finding us? He asked. I'm not sure, Sundar admitted. But we're going to find out. He pulled out his phone and, with a few quick taps, activated an encrypted signal blocking app. He also checked his own devices for tracking, nothing obvious. Then he remembered the water bottle from earlier, the keychain. Milo's clothes. Milo. He said slowly, where did you get that spaceship keychain? Milo blinked. It was in the donation box at the shelter. A man gave me a few things. Why? Sundar examined it closely. Under the tiny plastic base, barely visible, was a tiny black dot, a tracker. He held it up. This is how they knew where you were. Milo's eyes widened in horror. You think they'd planted it on purpose? Yes, Sundar said. They've been following you longer than we thought. He crushed the tracker under his shoe and tossed the remains off the rooftop. They're not tracking you anymore. Now we take the lead. Milo looked at him. How? Sundar stared into the night, then picked up his phone again. This time, he sent a message directly to Jonah Thorne's secure line. Meet us at Pier 47 rooftop. Come alone. Bring encrypted scanner. We have evidence. 10 minutes later, Jonah arrived, his face tight with worry. You okay? Yes, Sundar. And the kid? We're fine. Barely, Sundar said. But it's bigger than we thought. Have you heard the name, boss? Jonah's eyes narrowed. Yeah, he's a ghost. Connected to threats across 3 states. But no one's seen him. No photo. No real name. He's behind this, Sundar said. Milo heard his name. And they've been tracking him with this. He handed over the KEYCAAIN. Jonah examined it carefully. Military-grade micro-tracker. Not something you get off Amazon. We need to move fast, Sundar said, before they regroup. Jonah nodded. I'll take Milo to a safe house. One only a few people know. You can trust me. Milo looked up at Sundar, hesitant. You're not coming? Sundar knelt down. I have to do something first. We need proof. More than just your word. I'm going to the deli. What? No. Milo said. They'll be waiting. I won't be alone, Sundar assured him. And I won't go inside, just surveillance. If we get something on camera, anything, we can expose them, Jonah agreed. I'll stay in the area. If anything goes wrong, you call me. Milo threw his arms around Sundar's neck. Thank you, he whispered. Sundar smiled gently. You're the bravest kid I've ever met. We're going to end this together. As Jonah led Milo away into the dark, Sundar stood on the rooftop. A moment longer, staring out over the city. He had faced investors, regulators, and global markets, but nothing had ever felt as urgent as protecting one lost boy who had dared to shout, "Don't eat that." And now it was his turn to fight back. Asterisk the wire, the truth. And the roar of Justice City was still cloaked in silence when Sundar Pichai stood once again across the street from the small deli where everything had begun. Only this time, he wasn't here for a sandwich. He was here for the truth. The wind tugged at his coat as he glanced at the faded sign over the shop. It looked harmless from the outside, just another forgotten corner store in a city teeming with people too busy to notice the stories unraveling in the shadows. But inside, beneath the worn tiles and flickering fluorescent lights, something dark had been festering. A secret operation hidden in plain sight. He wasn't a trained investigator. He wasn't a spy or a soldier. But Sundar had learned long ago that real leadership didn't come from titles or power. It came from doing what others wouldn't. And now, a boy's life depended on what he did next. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was Jonah. We're ready, the detective said. You've got 5 minutes. The listening van is stationed 2 blocks away. We're patched into your mic. Be careful. Sundar adjusted the thin wire running up his shirt collar. Copy that. He crossed the street. Inside. The deli looked the same, too clean in the front, too quiet in the back. The owner wasn't there. Sundar knew why. He was still recovering in the hospital after being found unconscious 2 nights ago. Someone had tried to send a message, and Sundar had decided to send one back. A bell chimed softly as he pushed the door open. Behind the counter stood a different man, broad-shouldered, face covered in a patchy beard, arms folded across a black hoodie. Another lingered near the back door, tapping something into a phone. The air was thick, tense. You lost? The man behind the counter asked, voice low and gravelly. No, Sundar replied calmly. I'm here for a sandwich. The man eyed him with suspicion. We're closed. The door wasn't locked, Sundar said, looking around. I figured I'd try my luck. Well, you figured wrong, the second man muttered, stepping closer. Sundar's pulse picked up, but he stayed still. You fellas wouldn't happen to know a kid named Milo, would you? The room froze. The first man stepped around the counter. Who's asking? Sundar didn't flinch. He saved my life. And he might have saved others too. But that doesn't sit well with people like you, does it? You got a big mouth, the second man growled, and no idea who you're messing with. You'd be surprised, Sundar said. Because right now, this big mouth of mine is wearing a wire, and everything you say is being recorded by the San Francisco P. The men stiffened outside. Sirens wailed in the distance.